Today on the program, Ukraine Today. The situation at the front. Russian troops have invaded the territory of Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk region. President Zelensky held a major press conference on Friday. He made important statements about the war. Putin is flying to China. US President Donald Trump has withdrawn Secret Service protection from former Vice President Kamala Harris. I've gathered for you the most important and significant news about Russia's war against Ukraine from the past week. My name is Yulia Kort. Good evening. On Wednesday, the Ukrainian General Staff confirmed that Russian troops had invaded the territory of the Dnipropetrovsk region. According to their information, fighting is taking place in the area of Zaporizhzhia and Novogeorgivka. The message from the General Staff states that these settlements have not yet been occupied and Ukraine's defense forces have halted the Russian advance. Over the past week, the pace of the Russian advance in this sector of the front has been higher than anywhere else. The Russian Vostok Group is operating in this area. The group has received significant reinforcements. Its objectives include the complete capture of the territory of Donetsk region to the southwest from Pokrovsk and preparing the conditions for further advances towards Zaporizhzhia, bypassing Ukrainian fortified positions from the north. In the Kupiansk area, the Ukrainian armed forces are trying to hold their positions. Russian forces have approached the city of Kupiansk from the north and are threatening to cut off the main supply route to the city, which leads west. Some Russian bloggers are already claiming that fighting is taking place inside Kupiansk itself. This is a lie. And the American Institute for the Study of War has found no evidence to support this. A new jet-powered drone reached a speed of 600 km/h during a demonstration test, which is more than 3 times faster than the widely used Jiran 2 drones. It turned out that the UAV was equipped with a check engine from the company PBS Velka Bitesh. Some modifications of the Garant 3 with a jet engine are sometimes also fitted with Chinese engines. A German pump was found in the fuel system, raising the question of how parts from the European Union ended up in Russian weaponry. Are the sanctions working? The European Union is considering for the first time the possibility of using a secondary sanctions mechanism against third countries that help Moscow circumvent restrictions. This was reported by Bloomberg. All the details are in the report.
In other words, it's not the main operators who are being targeted, but rather those countries or companies that enable the circumvention of these sanctions.
When you impose sanctions, you absolutely need to have a large number of people monitoring their enforcement. That is why there is significant criticism of Trump's policies when he cuts funding for those US government agencies that are actually supposed to monitor compliance with sanctions. When this kind of oversight is lacking, their effectiveness is far from ideal.
The restriction mechanism allows for the prohibition of the export, supply, or transfer of certain goods to countries that, unfortunately, are implementing them.
Discussions among European leaders will mainly revolve around the main depression. The question is whether to fully commit to Trump's rules and essentially remain in that era, or if necessary to make it clear that the European group is an independent entity. Here, the issue concerns the European agency. But the real point is that when the European agency is very beneficial for Ukraine, in this case, such an agency will not be a priority for us. In principle, it would be beneficial for us if the US and Europe act in unison, putting pressure on everyone who helps Russia.
In addition, the ministers intend to discuss the possibility of expanding restrictions against the Russian oil and gas sectors, as well as in the financial sector, along with additional measures regarding the import and export of Russian goods. However, the meeting will not address discussions of the next 19th package of sanctions against Russia.
First of all, they will discuss mechanisms for this control and ways to strengthen that control. Secondly, they will discuss what Besson mentioned, taking certain steps together with the US. So this is not exactly a new package of sanctions, agreed. This is more of a response to the policy of the United States of America, specifically a psychological decision by the EU to say, we agree with you to jointly put pressure on Russia by raising tariffs on countries like China and India.
Despite the sanctions and Russia's budget deficit, Putin continues to fund the war. Thus, by the end of the first half of 2025, Russia's military spending reached almost 8.5 trillion rubles.
They produce weapons, they produce ammunition, but there is no added value for the economy. In other words, they just divert resources, that's all. So we've covered the first factor. So why are resources becoming even scarcer? The second significant factor is the persistently unfavorable price situation for oil and gas. Yes, global oil prices have indeed dropped by about 15% and subsequently stabilized at around $66 to $67 per barrel. That's specifically for Brent crude, while Russian oil is currently at about $62. But that's not all. That is, there's also the effect of sanctions.
On average, the Russian military machine was consuming 1.4 trillion rubles per month and almost 47 billion rubles per day. This amount exceeds the annual budgets of Russia's poorer regions.
Traditional Russian spending on science, culture, education, and healthcare is currently being cut, and pension indexation is being frozen because inflation is understated in the official statistics. It's actually around 15%, which is a significant figure. But there is no such indexation of pensions, and this means that many pensioners will unfortunately continue to see their pensions significantly reduced, while government spending on the ongoing war will regrettably increase.
Not only is Putin sending Russians to their deaths in the army, but the Kremlin dictator is spending every other ruble from Russians' taxes, leaving his country stripped bare and destitute.
For the first time, Ukraine has officially demonstrated the modernized long-range Neptune missile. Its range is up to 1,000 kilometers. It is designed to strike ground targets and has been actively used against the enemy since the spring of 2025. Let's take a look.
Ukraine has revealed that this is the long-range Neptune for the first time. They have also unveiled a new Ukrainian mission for the first time. The long-range Neptune with a range of up to 1,000 kilometers.
We are Ukrainians, we have independence, and we have weapons.
The missile combines the R-360 Neptune anti-ship cruise missile, which was used against the flagship of the occupiers, the Black Sea Fleet's Moskva. Moskva, that's the first 2 hits.
The propeller stopped, it's going to spread, it's going to spread. In half, it's going to spread.
Compared to the anti-ship counterpart, the long-range Neptune is larger in size and range and is also capable of striking land targets.
The missile that was clearly shown in the footage is noticeably larger and has a much bigger diameter. Well, to say that the naval Neptune has a range of 280 kilometers, and here it's 1,000 kilometers, they must have seriously redesigned the fuselage. It should be noted that our engineers took the simplest approach. In other words, they simply increased the geometric dimensions of the missile, thereby increasing the fuel.
At the same time, the fake story about the extension of long-range strikes on Russian territory is actually the result of a significant increase in Ukrainian production.
Ukraine has successfully developed and is now mass-producing at least 2 very long-range, in fact ultra-long-range, unmanned aerial vehicles commonly known as drones. These significant advancements include the Lyuty and the FP1, specifically the FP1 model. So the FP1 has a range of 1,600 kilometers, and as for the Lyuty drone, its original range, when the landing gear was fixed, was about 1,000 kilometers. Now with retractable landing gear and an increased fuel supply, it's 1,200 kilometers.
The scale of production allows for the daily launch of about 100 long-range drones at military and energy targets in the Russian Federation. In just the last few days, Ukrainian drones have successfully hit the Syzran oil refinery in the Samara region.
Oh!
Don't you see? I don't see.
That's all along the way. This is the final one.
Oh.
You got it, right? Yes. As
as well as the significant Ust-Luga seaport located in the Leningrad region.
Recorded as a single, as a group. You can see it flying.
And of course, we can't forget about the Ukrainian Pink Bird, the Flamingo cruise missile, whose appearance has significantly shifted the balance of power in the Russian skies.
And if we use the Flamingo, it can reach as far as Omsk. That's it. That means all Russian missile factories and 90% of Russian oil refineries, more than 95 Russian oil refineries, 90% of enterprises in the Russian military-industrial complex will be within striking range.
The main advantage of the Ukrainian bird is its simple production, a strike range of up to 3,000 kilometers and an impressive warhead of 1,150 kilo.
When a missile like the Flamingo, yeah, if a drone hits, it causes some damage. If a missile like that hits with an explosive warhead of 1,150 kilos, as claimed, then we're not talking about damage. We're talking about complete destruction. If it's an oil refinery, for example, there won't be any repairs or searching for spare parts, just scrap metal collection. And if it's an industrial facility, some kind of workshop, right? So you just clear the site and build a new workshop. Because repairing it is out of the question, there will be a crater 20 to 25 meters wide.
From now on, the fate of Russian oil refineries, military factories, airfields, and other defense industry facilities depends little on Washington's opinion or position.
On Friday, the president of Ukraine held a major press conference during which he made several important statements about the war. Zelensky responded to the course of hostilities on the front. He noted that the situation is currently most difficult in the Pokrovsk direction, where the occupiers have amassed 100,000 soldiers. In parts of Donetsk and Kharkiv regions, Ukrainian forces are attacking, and in Sumy region, they are pushing the enemy out. In the Zaporizhia direction, the threat remains, as the Russians are amassing airborne forces there. Volodymyr Zelensky named 3 key security guarantees for Ukraine. According to him, the foremost is maintaining the current size of the Ukrainian army. Cooperation with NATO countries, sanctions against Russia, and the use of frozen assets for Ukraine's recovery. He reminded about the ultimatum from the US president to the Kremlin, which expires on September 1. One way or another, the war will end, and Putin has nowhere to go, Zelensky said. The president of Ukraine emphasized that Ukraine's allies agreed to wait until September 1st to give Moscow a chance to demonstrate its willingness for a bilateral meeting. The president also said that neither Russia nor Ukraine is capable of achieving a military victory under the current circumstances.
We understand that Russia will not be able to occupy us today. We understand that Ukraine will not be able to fully restore its territories by force. They don't have enough strength. We don't have enough strength.
Putin is flying to China. First, the Kremlin dictator will arrive in Tianjin. That's about 140 kilometers southeast of Beijing. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit will be held here. It will last for 2 days, August 31st and September 1. About 20 documents are expected to be signed. The main one will be the Declaration of the Council of Heads of State. It will be called the Tianjin Declaration. Among them, they plan to sign important documents between Gazprom and the China National Petroleum Corporation. Putin, who has been in isolation since 2022, is reportedly scheduled to have more than 10 bilateral meetings. For example, with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, they will discuss Putin's upcoming visit to India at the end of the year. The Kremlin also wants to arrange a conversation between Putin and Turkish President Erdogan. Talks are also planned with the President of Iran, the Prime Minister of Cambodia, and the Prime Minister of Nepal. After that, Putin will head to Beijing. The Kremlin wants to arrange a conversation between Vladimir Putin and Chairman Xi Jinping over a cup of tea in a 1-on-4 format. Representing Russia will be Sergei Lavrov, Andrei Belousov, Yuri Ushakov, and Maxim Oreshkin. In Beijing, dictator Putin will take part in a military parade marking the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. But the guest of honor there will not be Putin, but the American leader, who is expected to attend. Follow our channel. We will keep you updated on all the events. Ukraine is destroying Russian oil refineries, and this is already happening on a massive scale. In August, the Russian Federation faced record losses in the oil refining sector due to drone attacks. Russian oil companies lost about 17% of their oil refining capacity. The total downtime of capacities in August reached a record high. the Kuibyshev oil refinery, owned by Rosneft, halted oil processing on August 28th after a drone attack. Both primary oil processing units at the plant were damaged, each capable of processing 10,000 tons per day. Some secondary processes at the plant were also affected. The Kuibyshev oil refinery became the fifth major plant to halt production in August due to drone attacks. At the beginning of August, the Novokuybishevsk refinery was affected, followed by the Saratov, Volgograd, and Syzran oil refineries. In addition, on August 2nd, the Ryazan refinery was shut down, and the situation with the Novoshaktinsk plant after the fire, which could not be extinguished for 5 days, remains unclear. What is the situation with fuel? More details about the gasoline crisis in Russia are coming up in our report.
Russian propaganda is hiding the real reason.
The line on Melniknaya, right on the road.
How?
I see it, there are two reasons for this fuel situation. The first, which everyone is talking about, is that some important major refineries have been shut down, and this, let's say, has effectively created a profound physical shortage of essential fuel supplies, which is consequently leading to its widespread scarcity across various regions.
Since the beginning of August, Ukrainian drones have attacked Russian oil refining infrastructure. In less than 3 weeks, at least 7 of the largest refineries were affected and had to completely halt production. The first to be hit were the Ryazan and Novokuybishevsk oil refineries. Look, it's about to absolutely blow up. Did you manage to get it all on camera? Unbelievable! 5 days later, the Afipsky refinery came under attack.
Look, a drone just hit the plant.
August 14th, one of the largest industrial plants in Russia, the Volgograd refinery, shut down. The next day, UAVs struck the Syzran oil refinery.
There are drones flying over there. Drones, wow!
No internet connection. The entire plant is currently engulfed in a raging fire. And on the Samara news channel, we are presently watching some kind of incredibly disturbing and unsettling footage.
The very last one, which happened on the night of August 24th, was the Novoshaktinsk refinery, which was significantly hit and impacted.
I think there's also a second reason that no one talks about publicly. But based on the experience of a similar situation in Russia that happened in September 2023, it's quite possible that this is the case. This is the cancellation of the damper. Back then in 2023, the Russian authorities, aiming to optimize budget spending, decided to reduce damper payments. The damper is a subsidy paid to fuel distributors for selling it domestically at relatively low prices.
Since the beginning of summer, wholesale prices for A95 gasoline on the Russian exchange have risen by 35%, and since the start of the year by more than 50%. A92 has increased by 40%. Even at these high gasoline prices, there still isn't enough for everyone. People complain that fuel can only be purchased with vouchers for enterprises and special equipment.
Well, in Russia, the goal is to cut expenses as much as possible. The main reason for these expenses is waging a full-scale war against Ukraine, but Russia does not want to stop the war. Therefore, it seems to me that a decision was made to cut damper payments. Moreover, a meeting on optimizing damper payments is scheduled for early September in Russia. But most likely, they decided to cut these payments even before that meeting. And as shown in September 2023, when damper payments are cut, the businesses involved in fuel sales simply hold back the fuel and don't allow it to be sold, since doing so would either result in a loss or the profit margin would not be as high as it could be.
Journalists report that the self-proclaimed head of Crimea, Sergei Aksyonov, admitted on a local TV channel that there are fuel problems on the peninsula and predicted that there will be a gasoline shortage for another month. The sale of AI-92 gasoline has also been suspended for residents of the Kuril district, which is part of the Sakhalin region, because the entire supply there is needed for special vehicles. The situation with gasoline could be resolved by Putin's friend, the Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko. However, he is in no hurry to do so.
In 2019, Russia decided to implement a tax maneuver. What did it involve? It meant that instead of an export tax on oil, a tax on oil extraction was introduced. Why is this important in the context of Belarus? Because Russia and Belarus are a union state. And by agreement, the export tax on oil that Russia collected in the case of other countries, or rather in the case of Belarus in this context, went to the budget of the Republic of Belarus. In other words, Belarus paid nothing, and the mineral extraction tax did not go to the revenue of the Republic of Belarus. This was done for one simple reason, because Russia understood that Belarus was profiting by taking raw materials from it and producing petroleum products from that oil. And for 5 years, starting in 2019 and ending in 2024, they spent time trying to minimize as much as possible the amount of fuel produced in Belarus.
Essentially, Russia ended up facing exactly what it was trying to prevent. With his stubbornness, Putin continues to drive the country into a pit of shortages and high prices. And it is ordinary people who end up suffering from his actions.
Is this revenge or not? US President Donald Trump took away Secret Service protection from former Vice President Kamala Harris, which had previously been provided by the Secret Service. This division was responsible for protecting former and current heads of state. By law, Kamala Harris was entitled to government protection for 6 months after leaving the post of Vice President, which was set to expire in July. But Joe Biden ordered the protection for his former deputy to be extended for another year. BBC journalists confirmed that they received a copy of Donald Trump's order canceling Biden's decision. The document was signed on Thursday, and a senior White House official confirmed its authenticity. As a result, Harris lost her security detail just a few weeks before a national tour across the US, during which she planned to present her book about her unsuccessful 2024 presidential campaign, titled 107 Days. That's all for today. Yulia Court, thank you for being with us. I read your comments and feel your support. Glory to the Ukrainian defenders. Glory to Ukraine. Subscribe, leave a like, and see you next time.
Join our community, support independent journalism, and help bring the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Me Yulia Court today. Join us now. Welcome.